The text came in at 2:13 a.m. 3 words I never imagined seeing. We need to talk. For months, I'd been piecing together our life together, the way we'd grown into something so familiar, shared songs, the same coffee routine, whispered inside jokes that stitched us together. Ethan and I shared a quiet kind of intimacy, a secret we kept between us. Then, slowly, something shifted. It wasn't dramatic, no sudden storm, but there was a crack, and everything started to look different. He started smiling at his phone in ways he'd never smiled at me. He'd return home late, smelling like someone else's perfume, chalking it up to a late meeting. He mastered the art of being present but still distant, like a shadow in a room full of light. I started watching for clues, replaying small moments like they were pieces of a puzzle I couldn't solve. The way his voice changed when he answered texts, the flicker of something private in his eyes when he glanced at his screen. I found myself waiting for the dots to appear and disappear on my phone, building explanations out of the empty spaces where his silence lived. Was I too much? Too available? Somewhere, between the silence and the shared moments, my confidence began to erode, replaced by a hollow longing. When the words finally came, when I cornered him in the kitchen with nowhere left to hide, Ethan didn't shout. He didn't storm out. He just folded, slowly, like a worn map, each word he spoke carrying more weight than his guilt. "I made a mistake," he said, voice so steady it felt rehearsed. He offered enough to paint a picture, but never enough to explain the man I had trusted for so long. He gave me a name, a mark, a handful of moments that seemed so ordinary, so domestic. He told me about the coffee runs, the small laughs shared, the little things that made the betrayal feel like it belonged to our life. I remember how absurd it was. The brand of coffee, the sun cutting across a table in a conference room, the kind of domestic details that shouldn't haunt you but do. Betrayal, when spoken of in the language of daily life, becomes a quiet kind of destruction, like a slow erosion of trust. I didn't respond the way I expected. There were no tears, no explosive outbursts, just a stillness that swallowed everything I thought I knew about us. I felt numb as the words hung in the air. Then later, when memory returned, I felt a quiet, simmering anger. It wasn't the kind of rage that could explode. It was more like an unraveling, a quiet rewriting of everything we'd built together. The days that followed, I began rearranging my life. I deleted playlists, stopped leaving the light on, began making the house feel like a place I no longer recognized. What haunted me most wasn't the physical act. It was the way someone else had been allowed into the quiet parts of our mornings. It was the stolen tenderness, the private moments shared in texts, the way intimacy had been rebuilt without me. That was the real betrayal, the negotiation of access, the quiet decision to let someone else share the parts of you that had always been mine. The world around me told me to heal. You'll be fine. You deserve better. But grief doesn't bend to optimism. It molds itself in rituals. A photograph tucked away. The rearrangement of shared things. New boundaries drawn like fences around a garden that's no longer yours. I stopped sleeping in our bed. I learned how to occupy time in a way that didn't feel like running from the pain. I took up pottery, read into the night, learned the quiet art of existing for myself. In the space between hurt and recovery, I found something close to clarity. Ethan tried to explain himself, tried to apologize in ways that felt both empty and necessary. He wanted to explain, to offer me a timeline of his mistakes, hoping it would make sense of the chaos. I listened, not because I needed to know the full story, but because I needed to know if the man I loved still saw me as someone worth staying for. Every apology felt like a fragile invitation to rebuild. Every silence a test of whether we could rebuild what was lost. But there was a truth I had to face. Intimacy can't be restored by words alone. It's built on the belief that vulnerability won't be used against you, that trust won't be negotiated away. When someone lets another person into the hidden corners of your life, the question becomes whether you can reclaim those spaces. Can you take back the tender moments? Can you rebuild what was once shared, not as a secret, but as a choice to guard your heart? I learned to protect my presence, to stop giving so much of myself to someone else's narrative. I stopped offering my time and my answers so freely. I started to reserve pieces of myself because I realized they had value, and that value had been spent without my permission. Not from anger, but from a need to preserve something real. This story doesn't have a tidy ending. It's messy, it's human, and full of contradictions. I still love the man who hurt me, and I still want to be seen for who I am, on my terms. If Ethan and I rebuild, or if we choose separate paths, this night will remain as both a warning and a lesson. Guard the quiet spaces carefully, and never let your heart become something others can enter without permission.